So there you go. We've looked at the core games on this system. Now it's time to break down the 545 in one. And to me, this is when the Coolbaby really started to lose its momentum. I actually originally planned to go through and pick out the best games that are very similar to the NES Mini, but found out the majority of the A-class titles aren't actually on there. So what I mean is, there's no Zelda, there's no Link's Adventure, and there's no Final Fantasy. Now that I can understand. There probably wasn't a way to do a save feature, so you know what? I can let that slide. But there was no Castlevania games. They had Mega Man 3 and 5, but no Part 2. They had Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3, but they didn't have the first one. They didn't have any Metroid either. So that was really big disappointing. I was hoping we were going to be able to play some Punch-Out as well, but again, no Punch-Out. Not even the one with Mr. Dream, let alone Mike Tyson. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of pick out top 10 games that I think you would really enjoy on the Coolbaby. Now that being said, I'm looking for licensed and unlicensed games that were released on either Nintendo or the Famicom. Not looking at homebrews or reskins this time. So again, if you want to go play those Teletubby games or the Angry Birds or some of the other really weird stuff in there, that's up to you. But we're just going to be sticking to straight titles for this one. So let's take a look. Now for the top 10, I'm going to pick a few from different genres just so you get a healthy mix. Up first, Ninja Gaiden 2. I already said in previous videos, I love the original Ninja Gaiden, and 2 does not disappoint. Like any good sequel, it actually improves upon it. In the first game, you could cling to walls, but you actually couldn't climb up or down. Well, they fixed it in this one. You can actually climb up to the top, but still have to jump if you want to get onto that platform. The game is just as difficult, and some of those really notorious enemies are back, like the diving eagles. But to help you, they've got some new power-ups. They actually have a power-up that shoots down, which is really handy mid-air when you're trying to land on a platform and an enemy is blocking your path. There's also some bosses it's really useful against. The best power-up has to be the Shadow Ninjas. You can get up to 2 additional ninjas to fight with you, and they do damage. It's a little difficult to line them up, but they can really help you out in the boss. They also are able to use your specials, so it really makes the game a little bit more interesting to play this time around. Another interesting fact about this is when they added in the weather element. So as a kid, it took us a few tries because we really didn't get the concept of you have to run with the wind to your back to make these leaps. It made the boss battle even more challenging. If you're looking for a great side-scrolling platformer, Ninja Gaiden 2 is definitely for you. Check it out. Up next is Nuts and Milk. Now, you've probably never heard of this game because it was only released on the Famicom. So, how did I play it as a kid? Well, I had the same 31-on-1 cartridge that almost every corner store had growing up. Unfortunately, my ribbon is missing. It was just a game I loved as a kid on there, and I don't really know why as a kid. And as an adult, I just still really enjoy playing it. It's just a simple puzzle platformer. I don't know what your character is supposed to be, but it's a standard Nintendo story. Save your girlfriend. You have a little bit of a jump in this game, but you have to collect all the fruits. You have chains to climb on, all while avoiding enemies. The higher you go in levels, the more fruit there is to collect, the more daring jumps, and the more enemies chasing you. It's just a cute, simple little game, so if you have young children and you're trying to introduce them into puzzle-solving games, this is definitely one that they're going to enjoy, so take a look at it. Now, I am not a sports game fan whatsoever. For me to play a sports game, it has to have a little bit of quirkiness to it. But this game, I absolutely love because of the quirkiness. I'm talking about RBI Baseball. My buddies and I have been playing this our entire lives. Even in high school, when we really weren't into gaming, we'd occasionally pop this into an emulator and just go at it. Everything about this game is fun. You have real players, they get tired, you can swap them out, and best of all, just listen to this music. I love it. The sound effects. When you get an out, the pop flies. Everything about it is great. It definitely has some stiff controls, but you know what? That makes the charm of it. I love that every character just looks like a pudgy little person from those old toys. I'm going to recommend this as the best sports game on the Nintendo Entertainment System. That's my stamp of approval. Okay, RBI Baseball may have been an overstatement as the best sports game for the Nintendo. There's a lot of good ones on here, and there are a few strewn out throughout the Coolbaby, but I'm going to talk again about another baseball game in my top 10 list, and I'm talking Base Wars. This is what you get when you replace humans with cyborgs to play baseball. There's 4 different characters that are available on each team. There's a tank, there's a hover, there's a wheeled, and then there's just a full robot body. Now, what makes this game interesting is, one, you can edit the characters, you can pick their weapons and their stats, or you can just pick a pre-made team, which is usually what I do. I've just always gone with edit team A. They seem to be really powerful, at least in terms of fighting, and I'm going to get to what that means. Each character has a weapon, and they have hit points. Where you're going to actually come into play is if somebody steals a base or you throw a ball to a mound and you get there. Normally, you would just be out. Well, in this, to determine if you're safe or out, you're going to duke it out. Now, there are some cheat weapons definitely in this. The laser sword is really overpowered. Once you hit that, you just have to hold down the A button and it drills it into him. The machine gun's pretty powerful, and every character has a secondary attack. So the android can kick, the hover guy just kind of crushes you, the wheel guy can do a 360 flip and hit you in the face, and the tank kind of has a shoulder smash. What really makes it interesting, though, is if you keep stealing the same base and that same baseman's there, eventually his hit points run out and they don't have a second baseman anymore and you win the game due to death. When you're playing the game as the pitcher, you actually have full control of the ball. You can change the speed by holding the A button down, making it go slow or super fast. Even once it's already left your arm cannon, you can control whatever direction you want to go in. The batting is a little bit overpowerful. Yes, I understand these are robots, but you're almost always hitting home runs. When you're in the outfield, it's really hard to tell where the ball is going, as I find the camera is just a little bit too short. The fence also should have been higher given that these are robots, but you know what? Those are minor details. Overall, Base Wars is just a really unique game. I remember playing it as a kid, loving it, still love it today. The AI in this game really handed my butt to me, but you know what? I won every fight that I got into, so you know what? I'm taking that as a victory. If you're looking for a fun multiplayer experience, look no further than the arcade port of Snow Bros. It's a phenomenal game. I've actually never really played it on Nintendo until recently when I happened to get a copy of it, but I did play it a few times in the arcade. Well, it wasn't really an arcade. They had the machine at the Cardboard Jungle, which was a sports store that sold cards. I would always go there just to get a few hockey cards and, of course, a lot of those Nintendo cards that had Super Mario Brothers and Legend of Zelda on them, which I still have a few of them kicking around in the pack. But let's move on. It's a great co-op game. It's very similar to Bubble Bobble, but instead of bubbles, you're throwing snow at enemies that look like they could have come from the real Ghostbusters. It's a difficult game, don't get me wrong. There are time limits, and speaking of Ghostbusters, if you wait too long, it looks like Sam Hain shows up and tries to get you. The enemies do throw projectiles at you, and I kept getting hit by them. There's no way to stop them, and there's no indication that they're coming. Every 10 rounds, you do come up against a boss that are rather difficult. I actually couldn't even figure out how I was supposed to do damage to this boss, so it's as far as I could get. Nonetheless, the game is really fun, especially for some couch co-op. Definitely worth checking out and on my recommendation list for the Coolbaby. Now, speaking of arcade classics, we'd have to put Donkey Kong on this list somewhere. The good thing is, the Coolbaby has all 4 copies of it. You've got Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, and the infamous Donkey Kong Jr. math game. Very rare title, really not that fun. It's when Nintendo was trying to do some educational thing just to keep the Parents Association happy. But for this list, we're going with the original Donkey Kong. It's a great platformer, it still holds up and is a lot of fun. Of course, this is the Nintendo version, which is very different from the arcade in that the nicknamed Pie Factory level is not included, likely due to limitations. Other than this, there really isn't much to say about Donkey Kong. I'm sure we could play through all 3 levels in about 2 or 3 minutes, but it's still enjoyable and you couldn't do a top 10 Coolbaby list without Donkey Kong. As I said, I was really disappointed that Mega Man 2 was not included in the Coolbaby because it is hands down the best Mega Man game from the Nintendo, and there's no debating that whatsoever. So I had a choice between Rockman 3 and 5, and I went with 3. Before my reintroduction to retro gaming, it's actually the Mega Man I played the most because that's what we had at our corner store, Edgemere Cabins. It's a gone store, but I thought I'd give that a shout out just for those of you from the neighborhood. Mega Man 3 follows the standard story where you play as Mega Man and you have to take down 8 evil robots. Unlike previous ones, this game starts out a little bit different. Dr. Wily and Dr. Light are actually working together to create a peaceful robot named Gamma. Unfortunately, some robots from a mining colony decide to take off with Gamma's crystals, and it's up to Mega Man to get them back. Big shocker, spoiler alert, Mega Man gets the crystals back and Dr. Wily reverts to evil and you have to battle him yet again. But you know what? It wouldn't be a Mega Man game if you weren't taking on Dr. Wily on the Nintendo. Mega Man 3 was the first introduction to Mega Man's pet Rush. Rush comes in coil form, which allows you to jump a little bit higher to reach platforms and ladders. There's also Jet Rush, so you can glide along on him. And then there's Marine Rush, which is kind of neat for those water levels. This was also the first time we got to see Mega Man's brother, Proto Man. He shows up midway through a few levels just to battle it out, and at this point he's just known as Breakman. It's not until you complete the game that you actually find out he's your brother. There's no doubt that Mega Man 3 is a great game, and it just doesn't hold up to its predecessor. I would say it's mostly because of the difficulty. It's definitely a harder game, but even though Mega Man 2 isn't on here, some of the villains from the previous game come back in a different form, so you do get to play a little bit of Mega Man 2, even if it's in a very roundabout way. I was unable to find Gradius, unfortunately, on the Coolbaby, which I really wanted to play, but I did come across Gunnak. It's a game I'm familiar with the name only, and I've actually never played until this, and let me tell you, I was not disappointed. First off, it has things I absolutely love. Ridiculous plots. So nature has actually turned against humans, and somewhere in 8 hidden planets there is a commander running all of this, and you have to track them down as Gunnak, the commander of the space police. Just the sheer ridiculousness of it right there already had me hooked. I do wish I had the manual for this game because there's a lot of power-ups and I really wasn't quite sure what I was doing, but you know what? I enjoyed it anyway. From what I understand, there's actually 5 different types of guns you can get. If you pick up the subsequent numbers, it gets a little bit more powerful. You can add on wings, and you can also collect money while playing. The money can be used to also buy upgrades, which I really didn't get the point of because there was so many power-ups in this game. It's a top-down shooter, and I'll be honest, it's a little easy. I flew through the first level without getting hit once, so you may want to drive up the difficulty if you're used to a little bit more complex shooters. I really recommend this game. It was a blast to play just for the first level, and I think I'm going to go back and actually sit down and play this again. I mean, look at these crazy enemies. You've got these wild bunnies. I can't wait to see what the rest of the game actually has. In part 1, we discussed the Kunio-kun series, and we're really disappointed to find out all the games are in Japanese. Well, the good news is, River City Ransom is actually on the Coolbaby. However, it is buried in there. In fact, it's titled River City Brawl. I actually couldn't find any differences in this game other than the title has been changed and it's been brought to you by Mike. So obviously a fan hack where they just changed the name, but from what I could tell, nothing else is different. If you've never played this game, where have you been? Everybody should have played River City Ransom by now. It's one of the best games on the Nintendo. I used to rent it fairly frequently from my corner store, and it was a game that I appreciated a little bit more as I got older and older. When I was young, I just thought it was kind of a Double Dragon clone, you know, walk along, beat up a few people, get some coins, buy food, fight bosses, and lose. But there's so much more to that. It's got some RPG elements if you've never played it before. So that food I mentioned not only replenishes your health, but builds up your vitality, stamina, strength stats that you're going to need to take on some of the harder bosses. There's a little bit of backtracking, so you have to pay attention to what the characters are saying in order to actually beat the game. Otherwise, you could just run one end of the game right to the other and miss the entire story and not be able to fight the Double Dragon twins at the end. The gameplay has a lot of unique styles. The characters say funny things, there's a variety of weapons that you can use to attack, and there's some really great upgrades, including the stone fists and feet where it allows you to do rapid fire attacks. There's also one that does weapons as well. This is a game that it's kind of helpful to have a guide with you because when you go into the shops, it doesn't actually tell you what the item does until you purchase it and you can't return. So that means you have to actually go back, fight more enemies, get more money to buy the proper items. River City Ransom is a perfect game for the Nintendo. It's got just enough difficulty to be enjoyable, it's multiplayer, and it's quirky. I think this is a game that we really need to spend more time on doing a full review. The purpose of HFX Gaming Memories is to tell stories and memories, and I know a lot of you have those memories about this game. So let me know what those are, and we'll do a full episode on that at some point. After completing the video, I actually went back and played a little bit more of River City Brawl, and there are some more subtle differences. There are signs throughout the game like Mike was here. Some of the character design is a little bit different, including adding eyeballs to the glasses characters who I always associated with Milhouse from The Simpsons. There is some swearing. Some of the dialogue within the characters has changed as well. Just somebody's attempt to be comedic, I think. Just be warned, if you're playing with young kids, there is some swearing added into the characters, so be mindful of that. Other than that, the game plays exactly the same. It's now time for the number 1 choice on the Coolbaby. Not only is this the top game on the Coolbaby by my recommendations, it's probably the number 1 hidden gem on the Nintendo, and I'm talking about that Ninja Turtles wannabe, Bucky O'Hare. And when I say Ninja Turtles wannabe, it's just there were so many various cartoon mutant animals in the 90s, it was really hard to keep up. This game honestly deserves its own review, so I'm just going to touch on it very briefly in case we want to save it for a future episode, now that I've reminded a lot of you about Bucky O'Hare actually existing. The gameplay is a lot of fun. It's a platformer that also goes in every type of direction. What I mean by that is one level you're going left to right, the next one you're going right to left, or you're going vertical. There's a lot of really challenging platforming. Now when I say challenging, this game is hard. The good thing is you have unlimited continues. The bad thing is some of the power-ups that you actually capture don't carry over when you continue. So what I mean by that is you have a primary attack, which would be usually your shooting. The secondary attack for, say, Bucky is actually a vertical super jump, but that doesn't carry over and you really need that. Like Mega Man, Bucky O'Hare actually has a stage select, so if you get stuck on one and you just want to keep playing the game, you can choose any level you want. That being said, there is a recommended order. I don't know the full details of the order, but you always want to start on the green planet. The reason for this is you're going to have to rescue Blinky. He's the little robot with the jetpack, and his weapon can actually break through ice. When you go to the ice planet, that's where you're going to rescue Jenny. So unless you have Blinky, you really can't get through that level. The fire planet is the red planet where Deadeye Duck is, and then there's also a sand planet where Willy is. You need to recapture all these before you move on to the final missions. Spoiler, they get captured again and you do have to rescue them all over again, but you know what? It doesn't negate how fun this game is. It's really, really challenging, as I said, but don't get discouraged. There's a password system as well, so if you do get stuck and you really want to see the end of the game, just go online, punch in the password. Well, viewers, that is a wrap on the Coolbaby, so thank you for sticking with me. I ended up having a lot more footage filmed, a lot of game footage that I ended up not using, but it was pleasurable to play a lot of those games. So in conclusion, is the Coolbaby worth it? Honestly, for me, no. If you want to play Mario and Contra and maybe some of those games that most corner stores didn't carry, then yeah, it's the perfect gaming system, but there's a lot better options out there. You could easily get a Raspberry Pi for half of the price and put twice as many games, if not 10 times as many games on there, but again, you need to know how to program that. If you're just looking for simple plug-and-play Mario with a lot of hacks and a lot of homemade brew games, then this thing is perfect. For 2021, I've got some plans, but I also want to hear from you. This is hfx Gaming Memories, and it's important that you send me your stories so I can include them in our videos. I did a little different style of approach this time where I just got in front of the camera and talked because this was more of a review style. I liked the naturalness of it, but at the same time, I ended up forgetting a lot of things that I wanted to include in the video. Previously, I was scripting things and talking them out slowly, so I think I'm going to try to find a balance there and see what works best. You also may have noticed that I talked fairly quickly in this video. Well, the reason for that was I was having some upper back tightness, and for almost 4 weeks I was really struggling to breathe. So that's also the reason it took me longer to get this video, so I apologize for that. So 2021, I've got some great plans, but I also want to hear from you. So make sure you put your stories in the comments, subscribe, or email us, or get us on Twitter. Until then, stay safe, keep gaming.